so what's your problem here? Look, we just let the market do it. That turned out to be a revolutionary thing to say. And he didn't last long working for them, and he had to become a professor instead. And then he started asking, well, in general, what happens here? And you'll find the article on the website, and you are sentenced to spend 30 minutes with it. The reason why I don't say you have to read it is if you read it carefully, although you'll understand every word, you may think that it was going to take the rest of your life. So it's from a tradition in which you can write densely enough so that ordinary English and simple examples can certainly occupy you. And Coase then asked that you just look at a whole bunch of situations going back to time immemorial, things that lawyers loved, like the ancient doctrine of lights was that your neighbor could do whatever he wanted providing he didn't put shade on your land. And that was the way it used to be. You had the right to have the light at your land everywhere, and your neighbor did not have the right to build a building that cast a shadow. That was the ancient doctrine of lights. That's not what we do anymore for kind of obvious reasons. We wouldn't have any buildings. And then Coase was asking, well, is this the right thing to do? And then he would ask, well, what would happen if you started out with the right to have the sunlight and you let the two sides make private deals? He said, well, there would only be two parties, and they'd make whatever deal was the right deal. And I, as the regulator, wouldn't need to know anything about this. He said, not only that, but in that kind of situation where there's just two people and they're negotiating, then it wouldn't really matter if instead I had the doctrine of ancient darkness and given everyone the right to build what they wanted and made the guys on the other side buy them out. Because either way, they'd be maximizing the value to the two of them, just be back to those two bid curves I had before. And it wouldn't matter where you started, so long as there's a small number of people, you have nice secure property rights, you can actually make the trades, then they'll trade to the place where their marginal values are the same, and they'll stop. So it won't make any difference. And that's the way environmental economists typically think of the Coase theorem. They would say, assuming you have property rights in pollution, for instance, permits that allow you to emit SO2, right? And transactions costs, what it costs to trade, are small, then it doesn't matter who you give the permits to. They'll trade them around until they get to the point where everyone has the same marginal value permits, and you'll get the same amount of pollution whatever you do. And that's one way of stating the story. The other way of stating the story is there was a nickel smelter. This is not a Coase example. This is one of mine. There was a nickel smelter in Murmansk in the old Soviet Union. And it wasn't a very efficient plant. And nickel is a heavy metal. And so it spewed nickel and other heavy metals all over Lapland and made the reindeer milk in Lapland unfit to drink because of the heavy metal content. Now, you would think, hey, wait a minute. Look, these guys are emitters. Those guys are pollutees, if you will. Well, why don't they just trade? If the reindeer milk and the reindeer herding is really worth more than the nickel smelter, then why don't the reindeer herders pay off the nickel smelter guy and get the rights to pollute back, and everything will be fine? Well, I'm sure you can tell me why that would never happen. So why are the Sami not going to buy the rights from the nickel smelter? Why is this not going to happen? It didn't happen, obviously. But why is it never going to happen? Come on, think of some reasons why this trade won't happen. Well, look, if something bad were happening to you, and you had only one choice, which was to pay to get out of it, and you could pay $100 to get out of it or have $1,000 worth of damage, wouldn't you eventually swallow your pride? Yeah, yes, I should swallow your pride eventually. That's possible. But in that case, the right outcome has happened. They should be polluted. Well, I'm just staying within the confines of the model. You can decide you don't like it, that reindeer herders should be polluted with heavy metals, and the nickel smelter should go on because the sum value of reindeer herding is much less than the value to the smelter. Right? This is a corner solution. That's possible. A little cold on my part, I admit. But what about the other way around? I'd like to negotiate with the Soviet Union over whether or not you're going to have a nickel smelter in Murmansk. How would I do that? We've got to be somebody to call. Right. What? Connections. Well, yeah, okay. So just thinking ahead, right? The Soviet Union, there are people called pushers who make the system work. And there's the nomenclatura. And so you get some pushers and some people in the nomenclatura, and you close down the smelter. Yeah, but it didn't happen. So the Coase story is about transactions costs. So how much would it cost you to make this bargain happen? A lot, the way we're telling the story, yeah? Basically, we have to subvert the power structure of the Soviet Union in order to get our deal done. Is that likely? Is that cheap? What? Which ones? I think you need to get a map and see how much territory the Sami people have across northern Russia, Finland, Sweden, and and Norway. You'll be surprised about how much land we're talking about. So the way I told the story, the transactions costs are very high. And another part about the way I told the story, there's no obvious property right. So there's no way to get a secure property right. I can't go to the smelter, buy it, close it down, and stop somebody from growing another smelter next to it. So I can't actually buy the thing I want because it doesn't exist. So another way to tell Coase's stories, which may be more what he had in mind, was that there are cases where you can't make a bargain. And so if you can't make a bargain, then however you set up your property rights to begin with is what you get stuck with. And here's what happens if we go all the way this way. So this is what happens when we abate everything. In other words, the people who are being polluted have the right. We don't have secure property rights, so we can't trade. Or the costs of trading are huge because we have to actually get an assembly of Sami people across 5 nations who live in small villages, right? It's transactions cost straight out. Either way, trades are infeasible. If they have the right to be clean, then we'll be all the way at this end of the diagram. The most amount that you can abate, because that's all there is 9.1 million tons in this example. And if that's the case, then I can find the area under the marginal cost of abatement and over the marginal benefits from the point I should be at all the way to the end, and that's the deadweight loss that I would incur. And then I can do the opposite. I can ask about zero abatement, the case that actually was. And the way I've drawn it, the deadweight losses here are really large. We're willing to pay $3,500 to clean this stuff up. It's only costing us under $1,000. We get out here, it's barely costing us $2,000. Only in here does it come even. And so this area is huge. compared to that area. So if you had to pick one of the two, and that were the only criteria, which area do you want? Is it deadweight loss, big or small? You want small, right? And so small, in this case, if all 9.1 is evaded. So in this case, the very right-wing analysis tells you if you have a choice of setting the property rights all one way or all the other, set them all that way. Evade it all. You could obviously draw that the other way. That's why people don't like that analysis. So Coase recognizes that trading sometimes is very costly, and if it is very costly, then what you do as regulation will determine what the damages are to the two parties. On the other hand, when trading costs are low enough, which I take to mean they're secure property rights, then it doesn't matter which firm gets the pollution. Whoa, come on, go back up. So let me just look at this diagram again. If we started here, and we let them trade, where would we go? There, right? We started here, and we let them trade, where would they go? Here. Right? So if they can trade, they end up at the same point. Doesn't matter who you give it to. So that's the contribution. So Coase's contribution is to say that without trading, one could get either of the deadweight losses depending on the property rights regime. And with trading, you would get the rights in the right place. And I'm going to add something. If you were a moderately intelligent regulator in a pollution world, you would probably choose a rights allocation somewhere in between without trading. And although you might not get to this great point, you probably could get somewhere like here or here nearby. And that might be just good enough for engineering work. And that's my little addition, Mr. Coase. Okay, now we're done with Mr. Coase. And I think that makes us done for the day. And on Tuesday, I will take whatever questions you have, and maybe I will think of some things to say on my own. And on Thursday, we have a test.